We're an island nation, drawn to the sea that surrounds us. A playground for some. For others, it's where they make their living. But the sea's unpredictable.
The sea is a scary place. It's an unforgiving place.
There to save our lives is a volunteer army of over 5,000 ordinary people, ready to leave their jobs, their families, and race to our rescue.
When that pager goes off, it's like that.
There they are! There they are!
You are somebody's last hope.
He's gone under!
I have never felt so much admiration. Marvel heroes don't come anywhere near.
Equipped with their own cameras.
Am I recording? Yep.
The crews give us a unique insight into every call-out, as only they see it.
Gonna get you home, all right?
For those who risk their lives, it has become a way of life.
There's no better feeling than knowing that you've brought someone's loved one home safely.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Hold on!
The vast majority of the 238 lifeboat stations in the UK and Ireland are coastal. But 4 of them can be found on the River Thames.
So London, for me, is the beating heart of the UK, and the River Thames is its coronary artery, feeding it with life, joy and tragedy.
It's why London is where it is today. It's why the Romans came here. The city's grown, the capital's expanded, the river's stayed constant.
The busiest of the Thames lifeboat stations, and also the entire network, is Tower, averaging over 500 shouts a year.
Within our operational patch, you've got 8.9 million people. So our patch extends downriver as far as Barking Creek, and inbound we attend roughly to Battersea, and we'll be to any of those 2 points in under 15 minutes.
There are a lot of risks on and around the water. The flow of the water, it's travelling, faster than the speed an Olympic swimmer would swim at. And I think people don't appreciate how cold it is, that you can experience cold water shock even if you go into the water in the summer.
So the Thames is predominantly fresh water. Being fresh, that means it's got little to no salt, therefore it's less buoyant. So whenever you do enter the water, your risk of drowning is a lot more than what it is on the coast and in salt water.
Last year, there were 6 fatalities on Tower lifeboats patch, 3% of the national total. And because of this high volume of urgent shouts, Tower is crewed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and aims to launch to any emergency in under 90 seconds.
It's very important to get to someone quickly when they're in the water, because it really doesn't take very long to drown.
When that red phone goes, that's it, the clock has started and the time is ticking down. The time's not with you, it's against you.
A crisp early morning in March. The Tower crew are coming to the end of their night shift.
So the initial information that was passed by London Coast Guard was screams for help coming from the river.
A man is reported to have slipped into the river just beyond the Thames barrier.
That's towards the end of our normal operating area, so you know that somebody's in the water. You know you've got to get there as quickly as you can.
The crew launch their E-class lifeboat and head the 10 miles downriver to location at its top speed of 40 knots.
So at that time of year, on that particular morning, the water temperature was 6 degrees Celsius.
In these temperatures, without protective clothing, someone in the water can become hypothermic after around 30 minutes.
When they say every second counts, every second does count.
The E-class is the fastest lifeboat in the fleet, but even at full speed, it will still take the crew around 15 minutes to reach the casualty.
We knew from the initial information that he's going to be in the water upwards of 25 minutes, and therefore hypothermia was a real risk.
As we were travelling, we learnt that there was another agency on scene, that they had tried to get to the casualty, but they weren't able to because of the position the casualty was in.
In the distance, we could see a police unit and a harbour service launch. They had successfully located the male in distress and therefore were guiding us into an accurate location.
The casualty is clinging to one of the pilings beneath a pier.
So I managed to get the boat in as close as I could to the person.
Hey, Jack's not going up, mate.
Do you want those down as well? Hiya! Kick your arms and legs! Okay, Mate.
Jenny threw a throw line, and at that moment I remember hearing he's gone under.
Matt, he's gone under!
So the moment he had gone subsurface, I jumped in.
That's where he went down, Steve, that's where he went down.
That's it, the clock had run out. He's only got seconds to live.
I thought that this guy was dead.
Right there, Steve, he's right up behind you. Okay, his hands on that.
Steve grabs the casualty and clings on to stop him from slipping back underwater.
You're right, Steve.
He was unable to swim, he was unable to assist me in rescuing him, and therefore it was quite physically demanding to keep the casualty afloat.
Hands on, Matt. Got you.
We've got you, okay? Right. I've got his arm, it's not going anywhere.
Right, you're right, Steve.
There's no words that will ever put it into perspective of the weight of responsibility and how it feels. You're just doing your utmost to try and bring this patient home safely.
1, 3, yeah? 2, 3, go!
When we got him on board, he was in a bit of shock. He was moments, literally moments away from dying. And I think that really hit the person, as it hit all of us, I think, at the time.
Do you want to come and lean on me?
We need to calm down, just stay here.
We had successfully rescued him from below the surface, which is relatively unheard of. But then you got to switch your mindset. You got to come back into the game. You got to switch from a rescuer mindset into a medical professional mindset.
Stay awake. What's your name?
What's your name there?
The casualty had been in the water for at least 25, 30 minutes, which is a really, really long time to be in the water for.
Yeah, I know. You're on the lifeboat now. We're going to get you warm.
We've got you.
We're going to get you dry, okay?
Straight away, it became clear that he wasn't particularly alert.
I know, it's cold and it's horrible.
He was in significant respiratory distress, and therefore time critical. We needed to get him off the boat and into an ambulance.
Okay, this is oxygen, okay? I'm gonna pop it on you and you're gonna breathe and it's gonna be helpful, okay? So that's all this is. This is just an oxygen mask.
Another immediate consideration, because the casualty has been in the water at, 5, 6 in the morning in March, is it going to be very, very cold?
Can you open your eyes for me? Try and open your eyes. It's cold. It is so cold, so it's a good job you're not in the water anymore.
Keep your legs down first, right?
You don't like it, I know.
A couple of minutes, like a minute. You're nearly there.
The casualty is taken to a nearby pier, where an ambulance is waiting to rush him to hospital.
Ready, stand up after 3.
He will be checked for hypothermia and suspected secondary drowning from water inhalation.
This was absolutely a life saved, no question. This is the closest that I've seen somebody come to losing their life.
The clock had run out. If we were 10 seconds slower, he would have drowned. He was underneath the surface and he wasn't coming back. This casualty was probably one of the luckiest men I've ever met, if I'm perfectly honest. It was definitely a job well done. Don't get me wrong, some days we rescue people and some days we miss them by seconds. You just never know what you're going to be faced with when you come in for shift, and you just never know what's around the next corner.
Of the 9,000 calls the RNLI respond to every year, some are a race against the tide, some are a race against the weather, but all of them are a race against time.
The instant that pager goes off, you switch into lifeboat mode. That adrenaline kicks in straight away. As soon as you hear that beeping, it's on.
So that's right in the deep channel, so he's going down here.
You get a feeling in your stomach and you just jump, you just go, just wanting to be there. You know somebody's in trouble, you know something's got to be done, so you just want to get there.
Okay, we're clear at the back now. All right, it's a bit bumpy,
A shout can feel like a race against time because it is a person's life in your hands.
If the casualty's in the water or they're lost and alone, a vessel is sinking, and every second does count.
Lying on the Lancashire coast is the historic port of Fleetwood.
Fleetwood's about 9 miles north of somewhere everyone knows, which is Blackpool. We're on a peninsula in Morecambe Bay.
Fleetwood was a Victorian destination for holidays. They believed that the salt in the water was healing, so a lot of people came to Fleetwood for the water.
As well as its long history as a seaside resort, Fleetwood was also known for its deep-sea fishing fleet.
It used to be this big, bustling town with a lot of trawlers coming in and out.
I think it was one of the busiest fishing ports in the UK in its heyday, and at one point you could walk from one side of the dock to the other side, going from boat to boat. It was that many vessels in the dock.
Though the fishing fleet is now gone, one thing that has remained constant here is the presence of a lifeboat.
So we cover a large area, and we also, because we have the ALB, the Fleetwood boat can sometimes get called out all the way out to the oil rigs in the Irish Sea.
The Irish Sea is notoriously stormy, and a memorial stands on the promenade in memory of all the vessels lost along this stretch of coastline over the past 350 years, ending with the River Dance in 2008, a wreck the local RNLI still remember.
That was the only time I've not wanted to go out. I was definitely scared, and going out of the channel, that was horrendous. The weather was terrible.
Run aground and stranded. Storms blow a cargo ferry ashore.
Yeah, the River Dance was a row-row, so roll on, roll off. That means that lorries that carry containers would drive on the ship would sail somewhere, and they would drive off.
She sailed from Larne, Northern Ireland Larne, in some fairly horrendous weather. She was hit by a very large wave that caused her to heel over and lots of the cargo to shift on board. The shifting cargo changed the weight of the vessel, which in the end gave her a 60-degree list. Because of that extreme angle, the fuel in the fuel tanks couldn't be taken to the engines, so they had a full, complete electrical, mechanical breakdown of everything 12 miles off the coast, drifting with an onshore wind.
As the gale pushed the ship closer to shore, the RNLI was tasked to help evacuate the 19 crew and 4 passengers still on board.
The lifeboat was initially paged in the evening. I'd been on the crew of the lifeboat probably for 15 years by then, and that night was the worst weather I've ever been in, either professionally or on the lifeboat.
The lifeboat worked into the night to help rescue all 23 crew and passengers, but the stricken vessel was doomed and ran aground within sight of Blackpool's famous tower.
In the days after, she went over a little bit further and sank into the sand a little bit. An amazing sight to see such a big ship on a beach led over that far. It was there for a while, so I think they did 2 or 3 attempts to refloat, and then she didn't refloat, so that was the next thing was to scrap her where she was.
When you're someone who's connected to boats all your life, it's very sad when you look at a boat and you think, that's the last time that boat's ever going to sail.
She was hut up where she laid on the beach, and she was just taken away bits by bits until there was nothing left on the beach.
All that now remains of the river dance is its name, etched into a memorial reminding everyone how dangerous this coastline has been and still can be. Saturday morning, mid-October, a spring tide flooding in, one of the highest, fastest tides of the year.
About 10:30 in the morning, pager goes off. I literally looked at my children and said, I love you, and I was away out the door.
Boat's running, innit?
Myself and Matt arrived at the same time, and we were told by the coxswain that it was a person waist deep in water.
The person in question called the Coast Guard directly.
Coast Guard Rescue.
Hi mate, I've got myself into fleet with boots, I can't get back to shore.
How far out are you, would you say?
Probably a mile, 3/4 of a mile.
A mile to 3/4 of a mile.
Jesus Christ, this is racing.
It's actually at your feet now.
Yeah, she's here now.
The boat is on its way. Won't be long.
Oh mate, I just try not to fall off. It's banking, you know what I mean? Christ, she's some weight on her. I'm going to get off this phone, mate, alright?
You might as well stay on the phone while you can.
I might have to go bobbing about a bit. I have to go.
Gone. This is Hollywood Coast Guard. The casualty has now ended the 999 call.
As soon as you hear someone's in the water on a spring tide, you know the tide's coming in quick, so every second counts to get there.
It normally takes the crew around 10 minutes to launch. Today, because of the flooding tide and extreme urgency of the shout, they do it in 8.
The person was reported to be in the water at the neckings. Now the neckings is sand flats.
The main danger in this area that people overlook is the tide.
Yeah, straight across.
When the tide comes in fast. Even the most experienced people get caught out.
The person could be swimming, they could be washed out to sea.
Could be a case of they've only got minutes, so they're in trouble. We need to get there. We need to get there quick.
The neckings is around half a mile from the lifeboat station. It will take the crew almost 4 precious minutes to get there.
We've turned up to jobs before where you've missed it by minutes, and if you'd have been there a couple of minutes earlier, the outcome would have been very different.
Go straight across here now, Matt.
Casualty is 200 metres off the boating pool.
Is off 200 metres off the shoreline adjacent to the boat.
As well as the very real risk of drowning, another reason for such haste is the sea temperature.
Mid-October, the water's freezing. You don't want to be in the water. It's cold.
The fact that the casualty ended his 999 call and has not been in contact since is also cause for concern.
I'm already thinking about potential first aid. Am I going to need the oxygen? Am I going to need to do maybe even CPR? I'm going to need to pull somebody who is no longer conscious out of the water and have to help them back to life. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best.
As the crew reach location, ready to begin their search, they spot a flash of yellow amongst the grey.
He was wearing the brightest yellow jacket I've ever seen. It was luminous. What surprised me is the fact that the casualty wasn't moving. He was stuck in one position If you're getting cut off by tide, you're usually at mercy to the water. You're being taken by the tide's current. The casualty was still. He was stationary. Something was keeping him where he was.
Right, it's all right. What's in the water there? The pump?
Oh, it's keeping me up.
All right.
Stay there, right, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
The bait pump that they used to get the worms out of the sand, he had dug it into the water, nestled it as far as he could, and he was hanging onto it. Yeah, it was strange.
Come here, come to you.
If you can.
Quite easily.
Another 5 to 10 minutes, he'd probably been washed off his feet and being swept out to sea.
Thanks, boys. Good. On your jacket!
Though the casualty is now safely out of the water, the clock is still ticking.
As soon as someone's in our boat, the first aid head's on. You have to start looking after that casualty. No matter how they seem or what they say, you know you have to help somehow. If someone's been in that water for too long, to a point where they've been cut off, and they are wet and they are cold, they need your help.
Are you cold and everything? Or?
Yes, you've pulled them on board, but have they got any other underlying health conditions? Is this going to change from a very, very conscious and very cooperative casualty into potentially an unconscious casualty at some point?
He looked cold, he had blue lips. As soon as we got him in the boat, we tried to get him warm as quick as we could.
Get that round, get the wind off him a bit, mate.
We give him a survivor's blanket and wrapped him up just to take the edge of the cold off, getting back to the station as fast as we can.
So I'm just a bit heavier.
Yeah, it's all right. Right, what we'll do, we'll get you up top and we'll get you a blanket on you, shower on you, get you warmed up.
We got him inside as soon as we could, and some of the other crew members took him straight through to the shower room in the station.
Shut the door, get in the shower and get warm, and I'll get you a suit to put on to keep you warm and everything.
Keep your clothes on, because once the warm water gets inside them, it'll keep you warmer for longer.
I think it was just then when he realised really what had happened to him, and the realisation and the enormity of what had occurred had started to hit him, really.
That's the first time I've been in real danger.
Adrian, a bait digger for the last 30 years, had set out that morning with his trusty bait pump to dig for worms on the sand flats at low tide.
Being out there, like 2.5 miles out on the small tides, nearly 4 miles out on the big tides, all there is you and the birds. You're closer to the ships than you are to the shore.
After a couple of hours, Adrian started heading back as the spring tide began to turn.
The spring tide, yeah, that's where the biggest tides are. It's coming in nearly twice as fast, and she was racing. I could not believe how fast she was going, but I still wasn't worried. I thought, I'm keeping up with you, so I'll get back. Maybe I'm getting old. This time, I couldn't keep, she beat me.
Not only had the tide cut off Adrian's route back to shore, it was also rapidly eating away at the island of sand he was now standing on.
Imagine it's coming in a big circle round you because you're moving all the time to the highest spot, and then eventually it meets at your feet. It's pushing you backwards. It was phenomenally powerful. I've never known anything like that. Never down 999, and I hate down in 999, especially for yourself. But yeah, just 999 Coast Guard fast, please. There's no rocks, nothing to grab hold of. Just put the pump in as deep as you can before the water gets any deeper. Put it down as deep as you can in the sand and just hope she holds.
With his bait pump acting as an anchor, Adrian could do nothing more than hang on and hope.
It got to the point I thought, I can't do this much longer. She was wearing me down. The effort needed to keep, it really did wear me down. I was hoping they would come quick. Boy, was I hoping they'd come quick. please, please. Begging. You're actually begging. Please hurry up. And then I heard this boat coming straight at me. Some feeling that you really, you know, when you're seconds to, sorry. Some feeling to see them come.
Thanks, boys. Go on. On your jacket.
It is. It's only when you look back you realise could have gone either way so easily. I wouldn't like to say how many more minutes I could have held on. I really wouldn't.
You must have said thank you at least 100 times to all of us.
This job could have been a whole different ballgame for any number of reasons. If he wasn't wearing the jacket that he was wearing, if he wasn't holding on to his pump, wouldn't have found him because he would have drifted off with the tide. So any number of different reasons could have made this a search for a body rather than a search for a person.
I have never felt so much admiration and respect. I could have kissed them all on the boat. Marvel heroes don't come anywhere near. They just really don't. They had wings. They're angels in a boat.
"500 miles to the north, close to where the Firth of Forth estuary meets the North Sea, is the small coastal town of Anstruther, population of around 4,000.
Anstruther's lovely. It's such a cliche, bustling little harbour town, isn't it? But it is.
Most of the vessels that head out are fishing vessels, working daily from the harbour.
Once known for its teeming herring shoals, Anstruther is now home to the Scottish Fisheries Museum, which serves the biggest modern industry of tourism.
Usually packed in the summer and famous for fish and chips, which I think is a pretty cool thing to be famous for. We can have some pretty horrible conditions at times, which can be a challenge for people not familiar with the area.
In the winter time it could get really, really bad seas. Yeah, it could get to the stage where the harbours would be almost sort of closed.
With its long history of fishing and stormy weather whipping in from the North Sea, it's perhaps no surprise that there's been a lifeboat station here since 1865.
The Anstruther lifeboat covers quite a big area of the Firth.
You just never know what's going to happen. Some days you have nothing, some weeks you have nothing. I have two within 10 minutes.
Early September, cold breeze, grey skies. And a mayday comes in from a vessel in trouble.
A mayday is the highest level of emergency that someone in distress can issue. Their vessel is compromised and lives are in danger. You know that there's no time to waste.
As the crew prepare to launch, more information comes through that the casualty vessel is a fishing boat foundering on rocks and rapidly taking on water.
When you get a call from a local fishing boat, you can be quite sure that it's going to be a serious situation.
Most fishermen would probably, at almost the last resort, call a lifeboat. They'd obviously try and sort of fix the problem themselves.
Both of Anstruther's lifeboats automatically respond to every mayday call, with the smaller D-class inshore lifeboat getting away first.
The priority is just get there as quick as you can. Boat on the rocks taking on water, it doesn't really get more serious than that.
Coast to Calm, South Sarah. Fast crew at this channel, over.
Once we got out of the harbour, it wasn't a great day. You in the helm just said to me, he just said, just hang on, Scott. So it was just full throttle.
As the D-Class races to location, more information comes over the radio.
The fishing vessel Eloise aground on rocks between Pitman Harbour and the swimming pool. One person on board is bailing out water. Request you close, assess the situation and if required, transfer the pump from the all-weather boat, over.
The D-Class continues at full speed to the newly pinpointed location a mile away, while the all-weather boat follows close behind, bringing a salvage pump to flush out the floodwater from the sinking boat.
When you hear that a boat is going down or that they're taking on water very rapidly, it's just one of those shouts that's for real, and you need to get there quickly, you need to do your job. But with a sinking vessel, it's just all the more urgent.
The loss of a fishing boat could also mean the loss of someone's livelihood.
It's a big deal because it's a small, tight-knit community. Even for this call, once the Mayday went out, there was numerous local fishing boats went to the scene, but they just couldn't do anything. They just couldn't get in close enough, but they all stayed there, stood by and just gave a bit of moral support until the lifeboat arrived.
When we arrived on scene, we saw the casualty was in between the skellies up the rocks.
After their full-speed dash to location, the lifeboat has to make its final approach with extreme caution, mindful of the rocks just below the sea surface.
Went in slowly.
You can keep an eye out for rocks for me.
Aye.
Yeah, that's Rib on scene now, just going up the rocks towards the boat there.
The fisherman, the guy I know, Graham Hughes, he was in the process of bailing it out. When we got alongside, the first thing he said to us was, I'm really sorry, guys. Don't worry about it. We just said, there's no need to apologise, we're here to help, we'll get this sorted.
With water drowning the engine and cutting all power to the bilge pumps, Graham has been bailing out by hand to keep his boat from sinking.
He was a bit tired. He'd been bailing his boat out for a while, but physically he was okay, he wasn't injured. No, I could stand in the water, it's fine. I'll just stay and give you a hand. Aye, no problem at all.
As Scott steps onto the casualty vessel, the extent of the emergency is all too apparent.
It had taken on a lot of water. When I stepped aboard the boat, it was up past my knees. As the water went down, or is it like it's coming in all the time?
Well, I think it's coming in all the time.
Aye.
But I've managed to get it down. At one point,
Christ.
it was up to about here, I think.
Up to the rail. At that point, we didn't know where the water was coming from. We just knew we had to try and get it out. All we had was a hand manual bilge pump, but to be honest, the best way of getting the water out at that point was buckets. So we're using buckets.
What do you think?
I'll maybe be quicker using this than the pump, I think.
Scott and Graham continue to bail out the water by hand with buckets to keep the boat afloat long enough for the all-weather boat to arrive with the salvage pump.
The ALB was probably on scene maybe less than 10 minutes after us. The helm, Ewan, he went and met the ALB and got a salvage pump and an extra pair of hands. Ready?
The crew work as quickly as they can to transfer the heavy pump to the D-Class.
Because you just got to keep filling up.
While Scott and Graham continue bailing by hand in a race against the rising seawater.
The salvage pump is a bit of a monster. It's heavy, it's unwieldy. But once it's up and running, it's really good at shifting the water.
The pump can shift 175 gallons of water a minute. And the floodwater is quickly pumped overboard, allowing the boat to float free from the rocks. But with the tide rising fast and the boat clearly holed beneath the waterline, the crew now urgently need to tow it back to the safety of a harbour.
I stayed on the boat all the time with Graham. I'd just start steering the boat once it was getting towed out through the rocks. Tie it off! Tie it off! and just managed to guide it through the rocks into the open sea.
The D-Class starts towing the fishing boat back to Graham's home harbour of St Monnans, a mile along the coast, now in a new race against the worsening weather.
We're still feet on water!
We had to take it slowly. I mean, it's not a long distance, but obviously with the fishing boat taking on water and there was a bit of wind, a little bit of chop, went at a slow rate. We just took it easy.
There's always the dangers in towing. You're worried about your crew, you're worried about the casualty, you're worried about your vessel, and you're worried about the casualty of the vessel. There's so many factors that you're thinking and worried about.
One thing the crews haven't planned on, however, is being called to another shout.
There was another small fishing boat on scene. I think it was a friend of the fisherman who had hung around to try and make sure everything was okay. But as it happened, he then got caught on some fishing gear himself. So our all-weather lifeboat was called back to assist him. It just meant we kind of had two shouts unfolding simultaneously.
The all-weather lifeboat peels off to assist the other vessel, leaving the D-Class to complete the tow to harbour alone. But just as the harbour wall is finally in sight...
Stop pumping! We're filling up!
Whilst we're pumping the boat out, the suction end got clogged up. It was just like seaweed from the bilges. So we weren't pumping the boat out. We were kind of bailing the boat out and then sort of assisting Graham at the same time with the pumping out.
So focused are they on keeping the boat afloat, they don't even realise they've made it safely to harbour.
You going there?
It was a relief to reach the harbour, for sure. I mean, just as soon as we were inside the harbour walls, we had shelter from the choppy seas.
I remember looking up at the pier, seeing Graham's mum and his daughters. That was good to see them. They were obviously worried. Just seeing his mum and his daughters with smiling faces made it worth it.
I was so glad to get into St Monnans Harbour. The relief for that was, immense.
Graham has been in and out of boats off the Scottish coast for over 35 years and has set out that morning to go lobster fishing.
The weather conditions that day were not brilliant. The wind was building up and the swell height was rising. I was just aware of this big wave coming towards me, and the boat rose up and then came with a thump back down. The next thing I noticed was the water round about my feet. The water just kept on coming. The relief when these guys come round, by that time I was ready to throw in the towel, to be honest with you. The energy was gone. I just couldn't really keep the bailing going much longer. I'm deeply grateful for them for responding as quickly as they did to me.
I could see how quick it's falling up already.
If the water had come in quicker, if the equipment hadn't managed to last as long as it did, within a matter of minutes, the vessel would have gone down.
I'm happy enough that you leave it now. I'll just keep going up with the tide and take it from there.
Vessel recovered and continuing well.
You kind of know these people, and you know how important that boat is to him. It's his livelihood. So to save his boat and get it back in the harbour in one piece, that was good.
Though the RNLI will always try and save equipment if possible, their primary objective is saving lives at sea. And of all the time-sensitive shouts they respond to, none is more urgent than a person in the water.
Come on in!
When you hear someone say, "There's a person in the water," you move faster. You get your gear on that bit quicker, you get in the boat that bit quicker, and you get there quicker. Because that person is potentially minutes away from, say, drowning or being swept away.
When we know someone's in the water, there's added urgency. We'll be doing life jackets up or putting helmets on as we're running down the beach to try and save on time as much as we can.
Go, go, go. Let's undo this, yeah. Undo this.
If you don't get there in time, then the outcome could be deadly for that person. Seconds do matter in that situation.
Clock there, 10 or 20 metres.
Sometimes I feel like the boats don't go fast enough when you know that someone's in the water and you need to get to them.
Just got a plan or approach, so just hold on.
Seconds could be the key to that person living or that person dying.
The small fishing town of Selsey lies on the most southerly point of Sussex, and at one time was almost entirely surrounded by water.
Selsey used to be called Seal Island. It was an island in them days.
Selsey is a little bit detached from the mainland, and some people, I think, quite like the fact that there is only one road in and out.
We treat ourselves as an island because there is a fair distance between us and the nearest city. Therefore, we are a very tight community, as there's not a lot around us apart from green fields and sea.
Selsey was pretty much built around fishing. There's been fishing fleets here for a long time. In fact, the fishermen were the first ones with rescue boats.
Those early rescue boats were replaced by RNLI boats in 1861 and have been crewed by local families ever since.
We've had a lifeboat here for over 150 years. There are lots of families on the crew, mainly fishermen. There's lots of father and sons.
And the birdies.
So there is a real traditional aspect of following in your family's footsteps, as I did.
Max joined the Selsey crew the moment he was able to on his 17th birthday.
My father's been on the crew over 35 years, so I have spent my entire childhood down the lifeboat station, watching him, watching the boat go out, watching it come back. If the pager went off in the middle of the night, the whole family would be awake. You'd want to know what's happening or when he's coming home. It really is in the blood, and it's been a very long time coming to get on the crew. Long time waiting and watching.
Now Max has made it onto the crew, it's his son Louis who watches him go out and waits for his own time to go on his first shout.
The main dangers in the waters of Selsey are the rocks. There's lots of areas that can catch a sailor out. We've had many rescues where we've gone out and we'll come back with the occupants of the boat, but not the boat itself, where it's broken up on the rocks.
We've had quite a few hurricanes and storms going through, the odd tornado.
We've had boats sinking on their moorings. When the storms come, most of the boats run and hide. It can be quite a nasty place to be.
This long history of storms and wrecks above the waves has also led to a lot of activity beneath them.
There's a lot of interest there for divers. Quite a lot of old wrecks.
Landing craft with tanks still on them, liners, submarines. They're all to be found off here.
So much sea life to see around these landmarks, and people love diving off Selsey.
A still, calm day in August. Warm, quiet, peaceful.
It was a nice sunny day, light northerly wind, yeah, beautiful conditions. I was washing my father's car as the pages went off. That was it.
A call has come in about a diver in trouble 14 miles off the Selsey coast.
We turned up down the station. It was a fairly urgent job. Half the crew had already been selected and were getting their gear on the boat.
If it's a dive boat calling for help, it's going to be fairly serious because they do tend to look after themselves pretty well. It's going to be either a diver has come up too quick or they've got a diver missing.
Sells' Shannon-class all-weather lifeboat is prepared for immediate launch. While 20 miles away in Lyon, Solent, a Coast Guard helicopter is also scrambled as more information filters through.
As we were launching, we learnt that this diver had come up from 31 metres, about 100 foot. He'd come virtually straight up. So there was a big worry that he had got the bends.
The bends is if a diver ascends rapidly, then they'll get a build-up of nitrogen bubbles in their system, which can affect the brain, the organs, the joints, potentially causing long-term health issues if not dealt with quickly. We could really sense the urgency to get out on the water and make our way to this casualty.
When a diver has the bends, the first 20 minutes after surfacing are the most critical. If a casualty isn't given oxygen in this period, it can lead to a stroke or a fatal heart attack.
So there was a huge amount of urgency, and you can feel that in the boat. You can feel the crew feel a bit tense. If a diver ascends quickly, there could be a number of reasons. I could be potentially looking at someone's having a heart attack at the same time, or it could be that they've got an injury where they've got their leg caught, or they've been harmed in some way on the sea floor. They could be bleeding. You just don't know until you get there.
15 minutes after launching, the lifeboat spots the casualty vessel with the Coast Guard helicopter hovering above, preparing to winch a paramedic down to it. But there's a problem.
It was only when they realised how small the dive boat was and that it was a rib, they decided they'd prefer to do a transfer to the lifeboat first, as it's safer for the helicopter and the crew.
Transferring at sea is a time-consuming procedure, requiring the lifeboat to match its speed and direction with the helicopter before the winchman lowers himself down. With the paramedic on board, they speed back to the dive vessel where the casualty is lying motionless.
Hi, chaps.
This is Lee.
Yeah.
He's been on the surface now 42 minutes.
Okay.
And he's had O2 100% all that time.
The skipper informed us that the diver had been down with the rest of them. The diver appeared to get his surface marker buoy tangled around himself, and as the buoy rapidly made its way to the surface, it dragged him up with it.
SMV just caught up.
Oh, right, so just dragged him up.
Yeah. And I reckon this is 28 minutes at 31 metres.
I can't begin to imagine what the diver must have felt when that buoy dragged him up to the surface from 31 metres, roughly the height of 6 double-decker buses stacked on top of each other.
Breathing's all right when he surfaced. Laboured breathing. Okay.
Though the diver Lee is conscious, the medically trained crew know any sudden movement or exertion will increase his heart rate and move the nitrogen bubbles around his body faster.
The only symptom he has is a slight discomfort in the right shoulder, but that might be from hard work. It hasn't increased or decreased.
He did mention that he had some pain in his shoulder. To most, this is fairly insignificant, but there could have been nitrogen bubbles building in his joints, especially in the area towards his head, which means they could have gone to his brain.
If the nitrogen bubbles in Lee's blood make it to his brain or spinal cord, it could lead to paralysis or even death, so they urgently need to get him to hospital.
Across to this boat, you're feeling up to it. The transfer you across to this boat. We're going to bring Lee and the oxygen tank over.
But the only place they can airlift Lee from is the deck of the lifeboat, which means they need to move him.
Right, let's do that then, boys.
It's really important that if a diver has the bends, that they're kept horizontal as much as possible. It was decided that for this very short period we could stand him up. There was the need to rapidly get him to the decompression chamber as quickly as we could.
If you start feeling any discomfort or nausea, let me know and we'll shoot straight back down.
Although he seemed okay and was fairly lucid, he needed urgent care. The situation could rapidly change.
Always in the back of their mind, it's going to get worse with air in the blood system.
Lee makes it across to the lifeboat, and the crew work quickly to prepare the winch that will take him up to the helicopter and on to the hospital in Chichester, 22 miles and a 10-minute flight away.
An airlift can mean the difference between life and death. The diver was concerned. There was that look of fear in his eyes. The wire came down and the winchman clipped up. And they were gone within a flash.
You've passed the casualty into better hands. It's a relief that that has all happened and it's happened right.
Lee is now airlifted directly to St Richard's Hospital for further treatment.
Scuba diving is a completely different world. I've always been drawn to the sea, I love it.
On the day of the incident, Lee was attempting to solve a mystery with his dive club from Worthing.
So the wreck we were diving was an unknown wreck. We were trying to find some information that might identify that wreck. We'd been diving for about 30 minutes and went to check on my buddy how he was doing, and I couldn't find him. I couldn't see him. So the standard procedure for separation, if you can't find them, you come to the surface. I filled my SMB. An SMB is a surface marker buoy. It's like a sausage-shaped inflatable buoy attached to a reel of line, a line to the surface to follow, and also your boat can see where you are. I held it a little bit too close to me. I let it go, and the line managed to snag around the back of my equipment. I realised that I was basically on an express ride to the surface.
To avoid the bends, divers usually ascend gradually no more than 30 feet per minute. But Lee was dragged more than 100 feet to the surface in seconds.
As soon as I hit the surface, I signalled that I was in distress to the boat, so arm over the head. It's the first time I've ever had that sort of accident whilst diving. But you're with consummate professionals.
Lee remained at hospital for observation, where thanks to the quick action of his fellow divers, he made a full and speedy recovery.
All the emergency services, the RNLI, the Coast Guard, all the NHS staff that dealt with me, fabulous. Big thank you to all of them.
I remember hitting the beach and my dad was on the beach recovering the lifeboat. He was the head launcher on the day.
Go on, big throw, big swing.
And I remember him coming alongside the boat on a shingle and asking how it went.
Good throw, buddy.
There was just that sheer relief being able to talk to him again and let him know everything was great and it went really well. And I feel like I've made a difference again. The diver, he was really lucky that he had such good dive boat companions on board that could give him the immediate care. He was lucky that the helicopter was free at the same time as us and that we were able to get to him so quickly. Without all of those measures being in place, he could have had a much different outcome. I would say that's a life saved.
Following his diving accident, Lee remains as enthusiastic as ever about the pastime that nearly killed him.
It hasn't changed how I feel about the sea at all. I still absolutely absolutely love it. There's part of me that kicks myself, you know, a couple of seconds worth of paying a bit more attention. You know, I've known one or two people who have had accidents and they've had a much worse time of it. So you certainly reflect on it. You know, you'd be stupid not to.
Lee also has unfinished business on the Selsey seabed.
I will be delighted if we manage to identify this wreck, which, you know, whichever one of us manages to do it. We'll certainly have a little celebration if we do.
In Anstruther, the boat that nearly sank is now high and dry, and Graham has solved the mystery of its epic leak.
Well, this is the section here which had the damage done. Through that, there was probably about 2 litres every second coming in. Yeah, it keeps going through your mind for a period, but you just have to try and put it at the back of your mind and move on and think of the positives that have come out of it. And the positives of being rescued.
And the very next day after his ordeal, Adrian went straight back out onto Fleetwood Beach in search of the bait pump that may well have saved his life.
When I got to her, she was still there. The tide had pulled her that hard that she was like bent, like that. But she straightened up all right and she was still there. But she will be going on a plaque on the wall. If I come into some money, I might even get her gold plated and engraved. And possibly give it to the RNLI.
And his trusty pump isn't the only thing of value Adrian has retrieved from his experience.
As soon as she turns, I'm coming in. Can I say, it's a mighty force. It needs to be treated with a lot of respect. And I have a lot more respect now than what I used to. Older and wiser? Maybe. It's about time.
At Tower, the crew didn't hear again from the casualty they pulled from the water.
We don't know why he ended up in the river. We never will know, but that's part and parcel of what we do, and therefore we just accept it for what it is.
The thought of having to go out in it was frightening.
As I put my arm out to grab her, there was a 3-4 foot set coming through and I'm thinking, she's not going to get in time here.
They definitely that day saved mine and Alison's lives anyway.
See, I'm getting all emotional now.
Whoa.